Leave it alone, destruction prone. Leave it alone, alone.
Leave it, not touch.
It's a judge's law.
No move.
It's a moral law, yeah.
Not change.
Not gonna change this law, no.
Leave it, not touch.
It's a moral law.
No move.
It's a judge's law, yeah. Not gonna change this law, no.
Imagine a Jamaica where every institution in the society, family, churches, schools, businesses, law and government is forced to accept corrupted, twisted and abnormal definitions of marriage and family.
Imagine a Jamaica where children are taught that being male and female is not based on what sex organs you have, but about how you feel.
A Jamaica where we would all have to accept, endorse and approve of two men getting married and raising children.
A Jamaica where a boy who thinks he's a girl has a right to use the girls' bathroom at school.
Imagine a Jamaica where sex is no longer only between male and female sex organs.
Imagine a Jamaica where you can't say what you think about homosexual behavior without breaking the law.
A Jamaica where sex becomes anything that people can think of doing with each other.
Imagine a Jamaica where you'd be accused of hate speech, fined, or even imprisoned.
Buggery is a new formality of what they're saying is for the homosexual or stuff like that.
Well, I'm not sure of the term.
I think it's sex between two persons that are of the same gender.
Buggery, I tell them I don't know where that come from. I don't show in the Bible already say a man to an ex-man, that's abomination to the Lord. Also a woman to an ex-woman. So I don't support that.
Buggery is basically anal sex.
Buggery is penetration from the rear.
Buggery is like
anal sexual intercourse.
I'm unsure of what that is. I don't know.
Well, it have all the attributes of doing with anal. So once it's anal, we kind of repel it a certain way.
I don't know what that is.
Buggery.
I don't know.
Buggery is same sex.
Buggery, I think, is having intercourse in the bottom.
Buggery is like maybe provoking or stealing or so.
I don't know what buggery is.
These imaginary situations that you just heard about are now a reality in many countries. And there's a serious, committed attempt to make them a reality in Jamaica as well. Well, that is, if Jamaicans do nothing to stop it. Now, this whole process of reorganization, of turning all our concepts of right and wrong, normal and abnormal, or even legal and illegal, upside down, this whole process is being attempted in the name of human rights. No, we all agree. Every human being, everywhere in the world, has what we call fundamental human rights. These rights are not the gift of the United Nations. No government can give them to you. These rights are given to every human being by our Creator. Some examples of these include the right to life, or the right to free speech, or the right to conscience, or the right to your religion. I guess we all will agree that the right to life is the most important of all of these, because you will never hear a dead person arguing about any of the other rights. They're meaningless. No. The importance of recognizing fundamental human rights really came to international attention with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in December of 1948. Why 1948? Because before this, during the Second World War, there were some horrible abuses of human rights. And the persons who signed that declaration determined that this kind of abuse should never happen again. But what is a right? A right is an entitlement. It is an entitlement on the basis of which you make a claim. For example, when I say I have a right to life, my claim is that I am entitled to my life and no one can simply arbitrarily take it. Now, every time you hear someone say, I have a right, you ask yourself, Is that a real right? And what entitlement are they claiming based on that right? And what demands are they going to make of me, if that is a right? Now, in this presentation, you're going to hear a lot about rights. You're going to hear how some persons are using human rights to change the reality in Jamaica. But it's not the rights I spoke about earlier, not the fundamental human rights, no. It's some new rights. They are creating new rights. But these new rights are going to have serious claims on the society, on you and on me. They're going to have serious claims about what we can do under the law, what we can say under the law, and what we can allow our children to be taught. So, we talk about law. How is law linked to rights, though? Well, one of the functions of the law, if you think about it, is this. The law decides how citizens in a country operate so that they don't trample on each other's rights. So, if you murder someone, the law says you'll be punished because that person has a right to their life. You cannot arbitrarily take someone's life simply because they are inconvenient for you. But who decided that that should be a law? Where did that law come from, that murder should be punished? Well, no law comes out of thin air, and no country's laws arise in a vacuum. No, not at all. Every law is based on a philosophy. Every law is based on a set of ideas about how the world operates. So, if we are thinking about keeping a law, or making a law, or changing a law, what we really need to think about is, what set of ideas is that law based on? And furthermore, if those are the ideas that are going to operate in our society, what will our society look like? These ideas, this philosophy, it could be called a worldview. And in the next section, worldviews are what we're going to be talking about.
What is a worldview? A set of fundamental beliefs by which we live our lives, whether we are aware of it or not. Everyone has a worldview. Everyone. Essentially, there are two main worldviews, although people pull from both in order to look at the world in different ways. For the purposes of this presentation, I will be focusing on these two opposing worldviews: the secular worldview, meaning there is no God, and the theistic worldview, meaning there is a God. Jamaican law and that of other Western democracies have been based on a theistic worldview. Presently, there is a determined effort to replace the theistic worldview with a secular worldview. We are going to go through 6 essential questions to show the difference between these worldviews so that you can consider which worldview has the best outcome for society. Let's look at the answers to these questions. First, what is the truth about the beginning of the universe? Or was there even a beginning? The secular worldview says the universe always was, always is, and always will be. There is no creator. On the other hand, the theistic worldview says there is a creator. The Bible states, "In the beginning, God." In other words, there is a creator. Second, how do we know what is right and what is wrong? In a secular worldview, man decides what is best. He comes to the truth of what is right or wrong by his reason alone. In a theistic worldview, we know what is right and wrong by looking at God's character. What is right is grounded in God's character, which is good. Third, what is the truth about human beings? Who are we, and how did we get here? The secular worldview says we are just here by chance, chemical accidents, evolved from animals, and as such are really just higher animals. The theistic worldview states that we are made in the image of God. We have personality, we are self-conscious, and we have free will. Fourth, how many genders are there? With a secular worldview, gender is simply a matter of how you feel. For example, in the morning, you can identify yourself as a man, and at night, that same man can identify as a woman. The Australian Human Rights Commission, in a document entitled Protection from Discrimination on the Basis of Sexual Orientation and Sex and/or Gender Identity, has actually proposed some 23 genders. The theistic worldview says there are simply two, male and female. Fifth, what is a marriage? The secular worldview provides for any combination of numbers or genders to qualify as marriage. On the other hand, the theistic worldview holds that marriage is an exclusive union between one man and one woman. Sixth, does truth exist and can it be known? The secular worldview states that there is no absolute truth, whilst a theistic worldview affirms that truth exists, truth can be known. Truth is what conforms to reality. Stop and think about this question. Can it be absolutely true that there is no absolute truth? Now that we have looked at the secular and theistic worldview, stop and ask yourself another question. Of these opposing worldviews, which is safer and better to use as a basis for our laws so that the dignity of all human beings can be protected? Worldviews. You don't leave home without one.
So Kevin, how's school?
Well, school alright. A couple courses when I study up for and thing, but you know, it's alright.
So how the family?
Well, you know my dad already, you know. Everybody cool, but my dad, you know, same crazy and thing.
Yeah, so, by the way, were you at the lecture on worldview the other day?
Oh, yeah, man, yeah.
Yo, it sounds good, but what it really have to do with my life?
Well, you see, the first thing you have to do is look at what a worldview is. Essentially, a worldview is how you look at the world and how you interact with it based on how you see it.
So that means everybody have a worldview?
Oh, yeah, man. The lecture gave us two basic worldviews, a God view and a secular view. For example, most Jamaicans don't agree with same-sex marriage and believe it could never happen here. That's the majority view, don't it?
So that is the God view, and that view say, boy, it's not right for two men to get married.
Agreed. But with the view that doesn't agree with what God has to say, a secular view, anything goes. Man and man, woman and woman, man and dad.
All right, Bridget. I see what you're saying.
All right, so check this out. In the 2008 elections in California, right, there was a thing called Proposition 8 where people voted for the definition of marriage. Cool? So most Californians voted for marriage being between a man and a woman. Cool? However, one federal judge who was homosexual overturned the people's vote. I mean, it shows it's not the majority view that counts, it's what the law says.
Yeah, my virgin, but listen, what a foreign you talk about, and this a yard, and everybody knows them things that can't go around here.
No, that's not true. It all depends on how the legal system is set up. You see, Jamaica is a particular democracy. It's a constitutional democracy. You know what that is?
Brethren, remember we did the lecture together. A constitutional democracy means that all our laws must line up under the Jamaica Constitution. Okay, I see what you're saying. And not necessarily the views of majority of the people.
Oh, you get a for that lecture.
You know.
So you see, all institutions must obey the law of the land because Jamaica is a nation under the rule of law. So you see, it's not really about numbers or how many people vote. It's about the law. And so everyone, without exception, must obey.
Yeah, brethren, me get that. So bring it back now to worldview.
Okay, all right. Let's look at that now. So there's a view that says there is a God and a view that says there is no God. Cool? So think about this for a second, Ricky. Imagine someone in Parliament passing a law. They're going to pass that law based on what they believe. So, here the thing going on. Since the law determines how we are governed, wouldn't it be important to know if that person has a God view or a no God view?
So, Kevin, we are saying that the people in Parliament making the laws must be a Christian. Me not Christian, and me not go church.
No, my youth, you don't have to be a Christian for no say certain things just the right and just no normal, yo.
See, brethren. So, you are saying that if the people in Parliament making the laws don't believe in God or Jah and believe that we can live anyhow, then they could make a law allowing for 2 men to get married?
Exactly. You know there are lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender organizations that are coming from a secular worldview. Listen, they have carefully worked out a strategy to bypass the majority view using the law so that their sexual behavior can become accepted and legal.
You know, Star, man, them serious about the thing.
Well, listen, in Jamaica we have our own organization. It's called the Jamaica Forum for Lesbians, all sexuals.
All sexuals?
All sexuals and gays. Listen, you can't tell me that they're not coming from a secular worldview. In fact, one of them from that same organization come on TV saying he's an atheist and he wants to stamp out religion out of the public square and out of schools.
Yo,
some serious things are going on.
For real. No, I overstand we are trying to say, brethren. So, you know, I read an article the other day in the Gleaner about a case in the Supreme Court challenging the bugger law. They are trying to remove the law to get legal acceptance, brethren, for their unnatural sexual behavior.
Oh, yeah, man. Me read about the same thing there in the Gleaner, yo. I saw some serious thing the man them depend, yo.
John don't start the man them serious about this thing, yeah.
For sure.
So, where we find all of these laws now, brethren?
You see, the bugger law is found in section 76, 77, and 79 of the Offences Against the Person Act.
Yeah.
What it is basically saying is that there are certain sexual behavior that is just not normal, yo. It's unacceptable. If, for example, anal penetration between a man and a woman, any combination, is it?
That means, brethren, if the law were removed, it would make any and everything that them doing in them bedroom become equally acceptable under the law?
Oh, yeah, man. Then, when the bugger law is removed, look what happened now? It can open the way for legislation imposing punishment on anyone who even show or disagree with them sexual behavior, you know, yo.
So, brethren, you tell me, say, if a pastor refuse to marry a man or 2 women, I bet you one of your favorite DJ refuse to perform at a gay party, they could be punished?
Listen, this is already happening in some countries, you know, brother. Now you see how this worldview thing can affect your life, brother.
No, Star. The man them serious about the thing. So let me get something straight, Kevin. So you say, boy, it's better for Christians if the law were based on a worldview that goes by what God said.
No. Brother, it's better for everybody if the laws are based on God's view, because you wanna promote the good of everybody in the society. Yeah.
Channel Star, brethren, me thank you. A whole heap of thinking this, brethren.
Yeah.
Yo, Irwa, late for your class?
Yeah, man, cool.
LGBT activists have a political agenda to reorganize the society to make sexual orientation a minority status which is protected by law. They wish to have new laws passed which will punish anyone who does not conduct all public activities as if homosexual and heterosexual behaviors are the same in every way. For example, your favorite gospel singer who performs for hire at a gospel concert will be punished if he refuses to be similarly hired for a gay pride event. Their agenda is formed and developed in a secular worldview that says there is no God, and if there is no God, there can be no absolute right or wrong. Now, sexual orientation has 3 components: attraction, identity, and behavior. The secular worldview denies the very existence of deviant or perverted attraction, identity, or behavior, and in so doing fundamentally changes the way that sexual orientation is evaluated. These secular concepts have now become standard medical opinions. Therefore, homosexual attraction is as normal as heterosexual attraction, and activities such as fisting, felching, rimming, farming, scat, chariot races, and other deviant behaviors are now to be considered normal and positive aspects of human sexuality. These dangerous, unnatural, and unhealthy intimate behaviors account in significant part for the high rates of HIV and other STIs among men who have sex with men. The value system in which every intimate behavior is accepted as normal and positive aspects of human sexuality is called moral nihilism. LGBT activists are using two strategies to advance their agenda: rights and public health. Let us look at rights. After the significant human rights abuses during World War II, including mass murder, the United Nations was formed and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was implemented on December 10, 1948, to protect fundamental human rights for all human beings. We all empathize with the concept of respecting each other's human rights. Now, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights has a theistic or God-based underpinning. The United Nations system produces two types of documents: treaties and resolutions. A UN treaty is an agreement arrived at after prolonged negotiation between representatives of the governments of countries, which are called in the UN system nation states. Now, if a country signs a UN treaty, it agrees to bring its local laws in line with its obligation under that treaty. In other words, a UN treaty is binding on countries and is a basis for international law. Major United Nations treaties are negotiated on the idea that there are fundamental basic human rights that we are all supposed to recognize. These fundamental rights cannot be created by individuals or nation states. We are born with them. For example, the right to life and freedom of conscience. No UN treaty mentions or discusses rights based on sexual orientation. The other document produced by the United Nations is a resolution. Unlike a treaty, a resolution is not binding on countries, and therefore they do not have to change their local laws, even if they have signed the resolution.
Honestly, I don't really think people are born homosexual. Some turn homosexual because of wants, while some just because they don't feel love or anything from a family member, so they go out and tend to search for love from others. They get trapped.
A young man is born, he's innocent, etc. I think it's a lifestyle that one lives.
I don't think anybody is born gay. It's just that they choose to go that way with their sexual preferences.
No, auntie, they're not born that way. Just because wants and needs and them ready.
No man now here then.
God don't make nobody like that.
For my opinion, they do it from their young and they grow up in it. They should keep it to themselves.
I don't think they were born that way. It's their choice. It's their sexual preference.
No, they're not born that way. It's their option to choose.
You see, maybe don't born that way, but you see, develop from even prison.
Well, at first, I never think that they were born that way, you know, but when I went in psychology class, they taught me that they can have some kind of genes.
No, they're not born that way, because God don't make nobody, just the mind. And things make people do certain things, because sometimes when they cannot afford certain things and you don't want to work, you end up that lead astray.
In my opinion, no. Homosexuality to me, it has to be introduced. It's more psychological than it is natural.
LGBT activists manipulate the processes involved in the production of international laws in the following ways. 1. They unilaterally, that is on their own, claim that they have rights to same-sex intimate behavior. This is the rights by stealth or sneaky rights approach, claiming that a right exists when one does not. They repeat the claim that they have rights frequently And this repetition causes the public to believe that the rights actually exist when they do not. Thirdly, they interpret UN treaties in a manner in which they were never intended to be interpreted at the time they were agreed upon. They use the claim that there was a gay gene to gain sympathy for their cause, suggesting that they were born with it and that gay is in fact the new black. But today, having accomplished their political agenda in developed countries, even LGBT activists acknowledge that no gay gene exists. Actually, the American Psychology Association indicates that the reasons for the development of sexual orientation are poorly understood, and that many factors, biological, psychological, and social, are involved in the process. Now, even if someone is born with a tendency, it does not mean that society must accept it as normal, when the acting out of that tendency may be harmful to the individual and the society. To summarize, gay rights activists are aggressively seeking to interpret United Nations treaties in a manner which reflects their desires. They have hijacked the concept of fundamental human rights and want us to interpret them from a framework of absolute personal autonomy and moral nihilism. This wholesale autonomy is also a part of the secular worldview. In other words, in this view, everyone does what is right in his own eyes, no matter how bizarre the activity. LGBT activists claim that nations who retain the Buggery Law are in violation of their rights as LGBT persons. It is said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Therefore, it is critically important that Jamaicans remain watchful for these stealthy attempts at inventing new rights.
If buggery was made legal in Jamaica, would that decrease HIV in men who have sex with men?
No, sir. Everybody that did have.
No, that not going to help. It about bring out more HIV and sickness and disease. Because if a next man penetrating a next man, that is both so wicked, can cause health mash up. You not like them something?
I doubt that because well, basically HIV is sparked from what? Human nature, the need to feel pleasure and also unprotected sex. So if you introduce that, I don't think that would reduce it. If anything, probably would increase it.
That's a fundamental mistake would have made, because if men know that anal sex is high risk for a person to contract HIV, I don't think the law should be what is really holding them back from going to be checked. Utilize a condom. The law have nothing to do with it in Jamaica. I think this worldwide collaborative thing where lobby groups for lesbian and gays keep on asking for all the countries to be tolerative of it. I don't think it makes sense. Just because of HIV, the law should be put aside to accommodate it, no.
The second strategy that LGBT activists use is to claim that countries need to remove their buggery laws in order to decrease HIV/AIDS among men who have sex with men, because sodomy or buggery laws prevent men who have sex with men from getting HIV tests, condoms, and treatment. The AIDS-Free World Internet publication of October 26, 2010 showed that there is a big difference in the HIV rates in Jamaica between men who have sex with men and the general population, of 32% compared to 1.6%. AIDS-Free World blamed the fact that Jamaica still has a buggery law for this huge difference. The Gleaner of Thursday, September 16, 2010, quoted Dr. Ernest Messiah, director of UNAIDS Caribbean Regional Support Team, as saying, and I quote, "The stigma associated with HIV is linked to prejudice and rejection of what is perceived and judged as abnormal sexual behavior and wrongful sexual orientation. It is precisely these stigmas that threaten the public's health." End of quote. Note carefully that he is suggesting in order to fight HIV, we must accept all sexual activities as equally good and healthy. But is there evidence to support this claim? And is this approach used for any other disease? Let us examine the medical data. Fact 1. In 2007, Singapore, after parliamentary review, decided to keep its Buggery law for men. Yet men who have sex with men in Singapore have a low prevalence rate of 2.6% for HIV infections. Mexico, which removed its Buggery law in 1871, has a 25% prevalence rate among men who have sex with men. Fact 2. France removed this Buggery law in 1791, over 200 years ago, and in 2000 was said by the World Health Organization to have the best healthcare system in the world. France has a prevalence rate for men who have sex with men that is higher than Singapore, varying between 12 to 17%. A study published by The Lancet, a most prestigious medical journal, reviewing new cases of HIV among men who have sex with men, heterosexuals, and intravenous drug users in France, reported that HIV was out of control among men who have sex with men. There were 1,006 new cases of HIV per 100,000 per year for men who have sex with men, compared to 9 per 100,000 per year for heterosexuals. In light of what Dr. Messiah said and what we know about France, we need to ask the question, is there still stigma and prejudice in France over 200 years after the Buggery law was repealed? Or do we need to look for the real reason for the HIV rates in men who have sex with men? Could it have something to do with the fact that the anus, the lower end of the intestine, is not a sexual organ? In 2011, the Centers for Disease Control in the United States reported HIV and other sexually transmitted infections have been increasing among men who have sex with men for over 2 decades. But more importantly, they say this has occurred despite considerable social, political, and human rights advances. Fact 4. In July 2012, an article in The Lancet acknowledged that the only group in the world among whom HIV rates have been increasing, irrespective of the income levels of the countries studied, is men who have sex with men. The above evidence shows that removal of the Buggery law is neither necessary nor sufficient for decreasing the prevalence of HIV among men who have sex with men. When we wish to control heart attacks or high blood pressure, we identify the activity that carries the highest risk for the illness, and we discourage that activity. Criticism or disapproval of salt eating or smoking is not punished. Instead, we discourage unhealthy behavior because it not only harms those who practice it, but also causes a drain on the country's resources. Why then are we taking a different approach for HIV? Jamaica spent $592 million for HIV prevention between 2009 and 2011. How can we then fight for acceptance and approval of acts that increase the risk of infection at great cost to the nation? So, to summarize, LGBT activists are using 2 strategies to advance their agenda. The first, the trick of inventing rights and pretending that Jamaica is obligated to observe them. The second is the falsehood that we need to accept unnatural and unhealthy behaviors to control HIV among men who have sex with men. The goals of these strategies, the LGBT agenda, are sexual anarchy in the context of moral nihilism and autonomy of the individual. That is, to have no rules or restrictions on sexual acts. And secondly, to stifle disapproval or criticisms of these acts by using the law to punish dissenters.
Homosexual can't write homosexual wrong from birth, it's in the Bible.
Well, in my own view, I think it's illegal, I'm not sure.
If it remains within the sect of people that, that practice it, and they are not imposing it on anyone openly, then I think they should be allowed to do what they want to do.
Well, I'm not aware if it's illegal
No, I don't think it. The culture of Jamaica will not accept it. Even if the legislation is put in place, the power that be cannot compel the culture of Jamaica to accept this in the society.
I'm not sure, you know, but to see other people like doing it in public, it's atrocious.
Can't be legal. I would not gonna make it legal. Come would like to see a man to my son and rape him off and thing.
If you make the Bogri law legal, as in legal for somebody to have sex with another, it means that you're giving persons consent to get an STI or HIV, because that's where the prevalence is, and that's where most of the time that's where it is contracted and then spread from.
How did we get here? How did some nations get to this point where there is now a push for same-sex marriage? We will look at the journey in other countries and its impact on the citizens of those countries. Previously, all of these countries had sodomy or Bogri laws. In England, the change began in 1957 when a government-sponsored committee, commonly referred to as the Wolfenden Committee, recommended that homosexual behavior between consenting adults in private should no longer be a criminal offense. 10 years later, in 1967, the Bogri law was repealed. Then in 1998, in order to prevent the promotion of homosexuality in government-funded schools, Section 28 of the Local Government Act was passed. However, that law came under pressure from homosexual groups, leading to its repeal in 2003. In 2006, the Equality Act was passed, followed in 2007 by the Sexual Orientation Regulations, passed pursuant to the Equality Act. These regulations prohibit discrimination in the provision of goods, facilities, services, education, and public functions on the ground of sexual orientation. What the regulations have actually done is to force persons to treat the homosexual lifestyle as being normal, with punishment for those who do not comply. Let us look at what this has meant for England. Well, even before the sexual orientation regulations were passed, the law was being interpreted in favor of the homosexual cause. Let me use the story of 69-year-old Harry Hammond to illustrate this point. In 2001, Hammond was beaten by a group of 30 to 40 persons while preaching. He was arrested for breach of the public order. The allegation was that he had displayed a sign which was threatening, abusive, or insulting. The sign actually read, "Jesus gives peace. Jesus is alive. Stop immorality. Stop homosexuality. Stop lesbianism. Jesus is Lord." His attackers were not charged. Instead, they were the witnesses in the case. The court found him guilty and ordered him to pay a fine along with costs. Or maybe, if you could find Eunice and Owen Johns, who had fostered children 15 times before, they would tell you how shocked they were when in 2009 they were not allowed to foster a child, all because they could not endorse homosexuality as being normal and good. They had a rude awakening. Then again, you may want to ask Leslie Pilkington, a counselor who in 2012 was demoted because she dared to make her services available to an undercover journalist posing as a man who said he was struggling with unwanted same-sex desires. He then reported her to a professional association who stripped her of her senior accredited status. You see, you need to understand that in many of these countries, the right to privacy has been twisted to provide legal protection for consensual homosexual activity. Yet, in those same countries, it would appear that this right to privacy does not extend to counseling in private between two consenting adults. England's journey, which began with allowing consenting adults to do what they want in private, is at the point where the state has now become an agent of the homosexual agenda by requiring the public to stamp the homosexual lifestyle with the seal of approval. Now let's examine what has happened in Canada. In 1969, the Pierre Trudeau government decided to repeal their sodomy laws. You will recall that was Pierre Trudeau who uttered the infamous words, "There's no place for the state in the bedrooms of the nation." In 1982, Canada adopted a Charter of Rights. Then in 1999, same-sex civil unions were declared legal by the Supreme Court. The Minister of Justice, Anne McLennan, tried to placate the Canadian people by saying that the definition of marriage would not be affected by this ruling of the courts. Yet, 6 years later, the Canadian Parliament legitimized same-sex marriage. Where is Canada now? Canada now protects sexual orientation both by its Charter of Rights, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, and by provincial human rights legislation. How have Canadians been impacted? Ask parents who objected to homosexual material being included in the curriculum. The court ruled that their religious objections could not justify the exclusion of such material. In Quebec, all children, including children in private schools and in home schools, have to be put through a curriculum that teaches that homosexuality is normal. So do you see what has happened? Bedroom politics has changed the entire fabric of Canadian society. What started in the bedroom with the repeal of the sodomy law has now overtaken Canadian society. You will recall at the outset, we quoted Pierre Trudeau as saying that the state has no place in the bedroom. Well, what has happened in Canada is that this bedroom now rules the state. Perhaps you may think that this can only happen in Europe and North America. Not so. Let's look at South Africa's journey. South Africa became the 5th country in the world and the first in Africa to legalize same-sex marriage. It was also the first country in the world to constitutionally protect sexual orientation. This was done in the 1996 Constitution. In 1998, the Constitutional Court declared sodomy laws unconstitutional. Then in 2005, the Supreme Court directed Parliament to allow same-sex marriage. What is the situation in South Africa now? Ask South African Member of Parliament, the Honorable Joanne Downs, who used a television appearance to criticize the hosting of the Mr. Gay World event on Easter Sunday 2012 in Johannesburg. It is reported that the South African Human Rights Commission is now considering a complaint made against Mrs. Downs for her remarks, including her statement that homosexuality is one of many sins. Now let us take a look closer to home. Let's see how the USA began their same-sex journey. The big legal push for same-sex rights occurred with the 2003 case of Lawrence versus Texas, when the Supreme Court declared sodomy law across the USA unconstitutional. At that time, there were still 13 states with sodomy laws. Where is the USA on this journey now? Currently, in 2013, there is a concentrated drive by both President Obama and gay rights activists for same-sex marriage to become legal in the entire USA. The matter is now being heard by the Supreme Court. How have Americans been impacted? Ask Crystal Dixon, who was fired in 2008 from her job. She dared to write in the local newspaper objecting to the comparison being made between civil rights victims and those who practice the homosexual lifestyle. Or you could ask the parents who cannot withdraw their children from those classes at school which portray homosexuality as normal. Or you could ask Hands-On Originals, Christian Outfitters, a t-shirt maker in Lexington, Kentucky, who in 2012 was reported to the Human Rights Commission for failure to make t-shirts for a gay pride march. According to Mr. Adamson, the owner of the t-shirt company, small business owners are being forced into producing a product with a message that conflicts with their beliefs and consciences. It seems clear from the cases we have reviewed that the journey towards same-sex marriage and punishment for those who will not embrace and endorse a homosexual lifestyle can start in one of two ways. Either by allowing for sexual orientation as a prohibited ground for discrimination, or by repealing the sodomy or buggery laws. It is only because of the existence of our buggery law and the non-inclusion of sexual orientation as a protected category from discrimination that these things have not yet happened in Jamaica. The buggery law also allows for the possibility of reparative therapy for those who struggle with unwanted same-sex desire. What does international law have to say about the buggery law? According to Professor Vassiani, former Deputy Solicitor General and former principal of the Norman Manley Law School, in an article printed by the Gleaner in 2006, and I quote, "There is no treaty that expressly states that homosexual sex must be regarded as lawful," end of quote. Note that homosexual acts between adults are illegal in 41 of the 54 members of the Commonwealth. We have also heard that the buggery law fuels violence against homosexuals. We say simply that violence against all persons is always to be denounced.
Would you like your child to be taught in school that anal penetration is a normal way to have sex?
You mad? You mad? Me know if my child go taught them, I teach myself, I teach her myself. If they want to teach my child that, me no like it. Trust me, I don't like it.
Definitely not. I don't think they should bring it in the school to corrupt the young minds. Well, that's just my perspective.
You're basically pushing something on a generation that has no idea about it.
No, I wouldn't, because I have two sons and I am strongly against them becoming homosexual.
No, not at all. That's too much pressure for the kids.
There we go on an international standard. If you're looking at it from a biblical point of view, it's totally wrong. It's an abomination.
No. God said man, woman, let it be that way. I don't want my child to be taught anything else. Make it be man and woman. Teach them that.
If the buggery law goes, then we could expect the following. Firstly, the incorporation of alternate sexual lifestyles in the educational curriculum. It is the existence of the buggery law which gives our Minister of Education a firm footing on which to reject the brainwashing philosophies which found their way into the HFLE curriculum. You could also expect to have gay clubs in schools, along with human rights legislation mandating endorsement of homosexuality as being normal. Such legislation would give either the courts and/or a monitoring committee the authority to punish persons who express disagreement. This would affect freedom of speech along with the provision of goods and services, as persons would not be free to operate their businesses in accordance with their consciences. Marriage, although thankfully currently enshrined in the Constitution, would become more vulnerable to legal challenge. Freedoms which we now take for granted, such as freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, and freedom of religion, would very likely be trampled by homosexual rights. Is this what you want for Jamaica?
God burn Sodom and Gomorrah with fire.
Man and woman can't be right.
It's not normal.
Men that have sex with men is wrong, you know.
It's just kind of out of the question.
It was performing in Sodom and Gomorrah and the city was burned.
It just doesn't seem right.
Anal penetration by the laws of nature is not normal intercourse.
Stand up. Stand up for our children. Say no to deviant lifestyles. Schools must not be used to condition our children to accept abnormal acts as normal behavior. Stand up. Stand up for marriage. One man and one woman as the basis of the family unit.
Wake up. Know what your children are being taught in school. Know what they are being exposed to in the media and elsewhere. Don't allow these new rights to take away your fundamental human rights, your freedom of speech, your freedom of conscience, and especially your parental rights.
Speak up. Sign the petition to keep the bugger law. Sign the Kingston Declaration on Human Dignity, Family and Society. Write letters to the newspapers. Phone into the talk shows. Get enumerated and share what you have learned. We have all heard about the kind of Jamaica we do not want. A Jamaica in which normal and abnormal sexuality have exchanged places, where freedom of speech and genuine fundamental rights are restricted to protect deviant sexual behaviors from criticism. We have heard that every law is based on a worldview. No law is made in a vacuum. We have heard that two main worldviews are contending, and that the Judeo-Christian worldview is the safest one for people to thrive and for the good of society. We have been reminded that we all live under the rule of law, and that whatever laws are made for society will be binding on all of us. We have heard that the LGBT lobby has used the rights and public health to introduce sexual anarchy and to punish those who are critical of their objectives. We have heard how the removal of the buggery law in England, Canada, South Africa, and the US has led to suppressing freedoms and redefining marriage. Jamaica, we are at a crossroads. What are we going to do? It may look like a difficult undertaking when developed countries like the US and the UK are imposing their secular worldviews on us. But remember, we have taken the lead before in the international arena, in standing against apartheid in the UN. We have been leaders in sports, culture, and cuisine. Where Jamaica goes, others follow. We can do it.
You may say, I am only one person.
Yes, but one person can make a difference in the nation.
And you may think that Jamaica is just one little nation.
Yes, but one nation can make a difference in the world.
One person can make a difference in the nation, and one nation can make a difference in the world.
It's a moral law. It's the judge's law, yeah. Now go change this law, no, no, no. It's a moral law. This the judge's law, yeah. Now go change this law, no, no. It's a moral law, yeah. This a judge's law. Now go gonna change this law, no, no, no.